Let's talk about Chelsea Football Club. Pin them back. We're going to get stuck straight into these. They have been on an unprecedented spending spree since 2022. Unprecedented since the spending spree that Chelsea went on since 2003, actually. Spending close to £1 billion in 3 years on new signings. Yet somehow, barely, staying within financial fair play limits. How on earth are they doing this? So, as a completely neutral fan, because that's the hat that I'm wearing today, I'm going to look at how Chelsea's creative strategies have seen them escape the regulations and just stay right inside the rules, even if they are bending them, and how they're essentially playing some sort of like cheat FIFA career mode to sign all of these players. They are finding every loophole imaginable. They're keeping spending hundreds of millions of pounds. And right now, they are the team that has got the most space in their PSR regulations. So strap in, get ready for some investigative journalism a la Steve. You ready? Let's go. FFP in a nutshell. Firstly, a bit of a refresher on what the financial fair play regulations are. These rules, which were introduced by UEFA back in 2011, have been mirrored by the Premier League with their profit and sustainability rules. And clubs that are in European competition are kind of English clubs that are in European competition are sort of beholden to both sets of those rules. And they're supposed to stop clubs from spending beyond their means. That was the idea for bringing that in, to prevent what Arsene Wenger called financial doping, which is a pretty good term, to be honest, and I kind of like it. In plain terms, clubs are only allowed to lose a certain amount of money over a rolling 3-year period. UEFA's limit is 60 million euros, which is up to 90 million if the owners cover the excess, while the Premier League's limit is 105 million pounds over 3 years. Some expenses, youth development, women's football, infrastructure, do not count towards the losses. So that's like a bit of almost like a tax write-off, if you will. Transfer fees and wages are what they're really looking at in terms of this. So if you're spending money like crazy, you either better increase your revenues or you better get mad creative with your accounting, and that's what Chelsea have done. In the last couple of years, Chelsea's new owner, Todd Boehly, and his little consortium have spent money like it's water. By summer 2023, they've spent over $1 billion on transfer fees since their takeover, and they've just kept spending it since. Even City and Guardiola are looking at it and going, wowzers. Pep even had the audacity to say, if I'd have spent what Chelsea had spent in the last 2 windows, you'd have killed me. But they can do what they want. If they spend 900 million, they have it. They sell a lot, so they can do it. And that's kind of the crux of what's been going on with them here. Chelsea have figured out a way to game the system, and that spending does actually fit inside the FFP limits. So I'm going to look at how they've done that and how they managed to exploit a couple of loopholes, some of which have recently been closed because of what Chelsea are doing. Now, they kicked off with their infamous amortisation abuse, or trick, if you like. They were handing out extra long contracts because the rule was you could spread out a player's transfer fee over the length of their contract for bookkeeping reasons. That's what amortisation means. So if you pay 100 million for a player on a 5-year deal, it costs you 20 million per year on the books. However, if you give them an 8-year deal, that same 100 million, instead of being 20 million, is now only 12.5 million per year when it comes to accounting. So Chelsea absolutely ran with that idea like they just discovered oxygen, and they signed an absolute slew of players on 8-year deals, 8.5-year deals, and even 9-year deals. Mudryk, Enzo Fernandez, he was on an 8.5-year deal because he signed in January. Insane. Mudryk's fee was 88.5 million, and that was spread over 8.5 years, meaning only 10 million a year went down as expenses. Enzo Fernandez, a British record, 106.8 million, also on an 8.5-year deal, 12.5 million is what goes on the books. They did the same with Caicedo, 150 million on an 8-year deal, 14 million a year. And even Cole Palmer got an initial 7-year deal, and that's been extended to 2033, meaning it's now a 9-year deal. Chelsea basically said, let's take decade-long contracts, which is absolutely unprecedented in English football, I think. Now, These long contract loopholes, they allowed Chelsea to sign a ton of expensive players and spread it out so their accounts didn't break the FFP loss limit every single year. And it was such an obvious workaround that UEFA stepped in and went, absolutely not. By mid-2023, they literally changed their rules to cap amortisation at 5 years for FFP calculations. So you can put someone on a 30-year contract if you like. They're going to account for the transfer across 5. Clubs can give longer contracts, but it doesn't matter. When it comes to UEFA's calculations, 5 years is the maximum. Premier League followed suit later in 2023, and all clubs voted to adopt the same 5-year cap going forward. They didn't apply it retrospectively, which meant that all of Chelsea's marathon contracts got grandfathered in. Well played. Basically, Chelsea got a loophole, they exploited it hard, and it got closed behind them without actually affecting them. As Sky Sports noted, Chelsea had the advantage of putting all those players on long contracts. No one's going to be allowed to do that again. And now the rule is changed. They get to have their free hit, and the ladder got pulled up behind them. Let me tell you a little bit of something that I've learned in my experience working in construction. It can be an absolute headache. You're trying to juggle invoices, you're trying to juggle deliveries, you're trying to juggle manpower, and it can all get a little bit too much. Let me introduce you to Priceworks. It's a little bit of kit that's going to sort out everything for you. And I wish I had this when I was on site. Whether you're pricing up jobs, sending invoices, or you're sorting the materials out, Priceworks has got your back. Trust me, no more messing about, just cracking on with the work. Let the software take care of all the paperwork. And it's bang on for all trades. Whether it's plumbers, roofers, scaffolders, landscapers, Priceworks keeps everyone top of their game. And here's the best bit, you can directly support my channel and help your business run smoother on site by going checking out Priceworks. Let Priceworks give you a hand. Sign up at the link in the description, and trust me, you're gonna wonder how you ever managed without it. Priceworks, build your business better at priceworks.co.uk. Loophole 2, selling players for pure profit, which is a word that's sort of come into the lexicon a little bit lately, hasn't it? That's their strategy, sell, 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 especially the players that they developed in-house. They book the profits that offsets their spending. Under the accounting rules, when you sell a player, the entire fee counts as income immediately. And if it's an academy player or a fully depreciated asset that's outside of their original contract, it goes down as what's known as pure profit. Chelsea have leaned heavy on this. Now, Chelsea have always managed to get pretty good value for money when it comes to selling their academy players, but recently they've took it to a whole other level and they've offloaded an army of players to balance their books. In summer 2023 alone, they sold £200 million worth of homegrown talents. United didn't help that by £55-60 million for Mason Mount, but the club's finances for 23-24 showed £152.5 million gross profit from player sales. As The Guardian noted, the sale of homegrown talent helps because the money received for academy product goes down as pure profit immediately. So no amortisation for that. It just goes ka-ching straight into the bank. They cashed in on the likes of Mount, Hudson-Odoi, even big name signings that still had book value like Kai Havertz, Christian Pulisic. They were sold to cut wage costs, but also bring in cash. Pulisic and Havertz both went for decent fees. And then in 23-24, again, they announced another £128 million profit, which is after a £90 million loss the previous year, which was just entirely down to player trades. £350 million on incoming players. Relying on player sales, particularly their academy players, is basically Chelsea's business model to reset their FFP balance after their spending sprees. It's sustainable as long as you have the pipeline of talent coming through and people willing to buy them. It is a risky game. You might run low on the family silver to sell at some point if you just keep selling everything. But Chelsea's spending has been so extravagant, £1.1 billion in just 3 summers, that they have to keep selling their assets to stay compliant. Now, so far, they've managed that. £250 million in sales across 3 transfer windows, an absolutely monumental figure for talent that's actually not really too useful for them. Keeps them well underneath the league's loss limit. But if their talent well runs dry or the market cools, they could be in trouble. Loophole number 3, creative accounting. Selling the women's team to themselves. This is another loophole that I think is about to get closed at some point because this is outrageous, especially when you think about how much it's going for. It sounds something straight out of satire. Chelsea's owners decided to sell Chelsea's women's team to themselves and book it as income. In 2022, Chelsea's women's team was transferred to a new holding company under the same ownership, Blueco 22 Midco Limited, I don't know either, for an internal sale for the value of £200 million. The idea was to record a £200 million gain in the club's account, basically out of thin air, and it wiped out all of their losses and allowed them to meet the Premier League's rules. It's a workaround, right? It wasn't real. On paper, it worked. Domestically, Chelsea's 23-24 accounts now showed a £198.7 million profit from the sale of subsidiaries, i.e. the women's team, which is how they swung into profit. It helped them comply with the Premier League rules for profit and sustainability. And the Premier League, at least initially, allowed it. And they allowed clubs to count related party sales like this, because that loophole hadn't been closed yet. But the scheme did not fly with UEFA. UEFA outright went, absolutely not. You can't sell assets to yourself and call it legitimate revenue. It'd be like me putting something in my right hand and putting it in my left hand and telling the bank that I've just made 50 grand. Doesn't work like that. Reports back in April of this year show that UEFA refused to accept that £200 million sale when it came to Chelsea's FFP valuations. Now, without that perfectly legitimate income, that put Chelsea right past UEFA's allowable losses. Their 3-year loss was then at 358 million, which is so far above UEFA's 90 million euros that they're allowed. So Chelsea are currently facing UEFA sanctions for the 23 and 24 period. They are reportedly negotiating a settlement with UEFA, which is going to be a fine, probably in the 8 to 10 million kind of region. They're not going to be asked. They'll pay it. They already paid a fine for 10 million back in 2023 for reporting irregularities because of the Abramovich era finances. So fines, even though it's a lot of money, they don't give a shit. It's the cost of doing business. When they're plowing billions into signings, it's pocket change. And it gets better. Chelsea valued their women's team at 200 million, considering that the women's side only managed to generate a revenue of 11.5 million with an £8 million loss last year. Financial experts put the valuation of Chelsea's women's team at 50 million max. 200 figure is completely pulled out of their arse. Politely, it's optimistic. The Premier League are supposedly still reviewing the valuation to see if it's fair market value, which should take all of 3 seconds, but they're in the process of reviewing it. There is a note in Chelsea's accounts that the gain might be adjusted if the league deems 200 million too high. In other words, the Premier League can be like, okay, you can't just say your women's team's worth whatever to dodge FFP. We think it's going to be X, and that means something. But as of now, no domestic punishment is coming down, and Chelsea, again, have pulled a fast one by pulling money out of one pocket, putting it in the other, and calling it income. It's not just clever accounting, it's damn right against the spirit of FFP and the rules that have been brought in. UEFA's harsher stance on this means they're not going to get away with it in European competition. I don't know what the result of that could be. It could end up being a transfer ban, it could be all sorts of stuff. Loophole 4, the Dubai real estate deal. Now, if you can't fudge the numbers any further, what about actually bringing some more revenue in? So that's what Chelsea are doing again. They are leveraging the club's global brand in completely new markets. So their latest get-rich-quick scheme is a revolutionary new partnership with Dubai's Damac Properties, which is called Chelsea Residence by Damac, which is a luxury football-themed real estate development in Dubai. Yeah, Chelsea's getting into the skyscraper business, everybody, because that's a legitimate football operation, isn't it? So this project, which they unveiled in April, sees 6 huge towers, 130 metres tall each, in Maritime City, which are going to contain over 1,400 ocean-facing apartments with Chelsea branding on them. There'll be a rooftop football pitch, because obviously it's football club-related business, isn't it? There's a Chelsea sports bar going to be in there. The whole works, right? And these apartments are worth 2 million-ish AD, right? Which is about 500 grand, something like that, for a 1-bedroom apartment. And the entire development is going to be hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion revenue for them. For Chelsea, brand new revenue scheme, possibly even more lucrative for them than selling academy products to Manchester United. Branded luxury, Dubai apartments, they're going to command a premium. You're talking big prices and probably quite a lot of demand. Weirdly, slapping the Chelsea logo all over stuff is going to translate into serious revenue for the club. Not only that, the Mac deal also immediately put Chelsea's cash into the green because they put a sponsorship in as part of the launch. DeMac became the official property development partner of Chelsea. Got his logo on the front of the men's shirt and the women's shirts towards the tail end of the season, and instantly got them to bank even more cash. Marketing team has done an absolute worldie on this one. It's like when United managed to sell Aon Training Complex, a private training facility that no one's even allowed to visit, for 100 million. But as you can bet, the residence project is going to be big profit for them. Those funds can be leveraged against Chelsea's books somehow, giving even more scope for the ownership to pump even more money in legally. And it's a little bit similar to how City have done it with all the Abu Dhabi companies. They saw an opportunity. They said, fuck it, let's do it. And that's what they've done. So how are they getting away with all this? Well, so far, they're finding loopholes, exploiting loopholes, and the loopholes are being closed as people realise what they're doing. Timing and luck is a big part of this. They weren't in UEFA competitions in 22-23 or 23-24 thanks to their shit show on the pitch. So they only had to satisfy the Premier League regulations, which were more lenient to them. That gave them a bit of a window to go wild, and it sort of explains why they were doing the spending that they were spending and some of the internal tricks without the immediate UEFA oversight. Now that they're trying to get back in Europe, they've got tighter UEFA rules to adhere to, and they are going to apply to them, and that's why they're currently being investigated for what's going on with their women's team. They've had a bit of a grace period. That's going to change for them. There's also the regulatory lag. Like I said, every time they find a loophole, everyone's like, oh shit, didn't realise that was a problem. After Chelsea have taken advantage, it gets changed. Long contracts, now capped at 5 years, but they signed a squad on 7, 8, 9-year deals. Related party sales, probably going to get banned or at least heavily scrutinised and regulated. UEFA already has banned it, and the Premier League does sound like it's going to follow. Chelsea managed to squeeze through the gap in the nick of time, like Indiana fucking Jones rolling under a garage door. They managed to just get away with it. They've probably got a team of lawyers that are just sniffing through every single line of regulation, trying to find a loophole for them. And they've got a willingness to push boundaries. One thing that they've done since Todd Boehly came in is been fearless or shameless in testing the limits and just going completely against the spirit of the regulation and just finding where is the black and white acceptable, unacceptable line, and then standing right against it with whatever they do. A lot of clubs are scared of FFP sanctions or reputational damage. Chelsea don't give a flying fuck. There's been, fuck it, go for it. What's the worst that can happen? A fine? Fucking paid out already. Paid out with what we've made. That's the game. They might pay another. They might get hit with another £10 million fine. Not going to be bothered. Their owners have got the money. It's like if they find Manchester City for what's going on with them. Owners will be like, sweet, that's the cost of doing business. You've got to admit, clever revenue boosting. Increasing revenues through sponsorships. The Damac deal. Potentially other global partnerships, which I'm sure are entirely legitimate and above board and legal. FFP is a ratio of losses to revenue. So you raise the income, especially with something like £1 billion project for real estate, you can spend what you fucking want. Chelsea's owners have been aggressively looking into this and expanding the club's commercial reach and even exploring selling off parts of Stamford Bridge real estate, looking for investors or whatever, all with the aim of just raising the limit on what they can spend and going fucking turbo when they do it. None of this is endearing Chelsea to the authorities. Both UEFA and the Premier League are fucking fuming with them, knowing that they're gaming the system. UEFA's already investigating recent breaches. The Premier League's looking at investigating some of the dodgy accounting from 2012 to 2019 under Abramovich. They had secret payments, which The Guardian revealed. You can read more about that in The Guardian. And there's probably going to be some repercussions if anything there is found improper. As of now, they have avoided any serious punishments, just a fine, which clearly they've got the money to pay. You know, the latest exploit, the 7-year deals, even when they don't count. You think Chelsea are going to pump the brakes? Nah. This summer, they just signed João Pedro from Brighton. 55 mil, 5 mil add-on. Give him a contract until 2033. 8-year deal. Despite the fact that UEFA's 5-year amortisation rule, the Premier League accounting, they're going to spread out 60 million over 8 years. Now, yeah, for FFP with UEFA, they can still only spread it over 12. Sorry, they can only spread 12 million over 5 years. But it's a grey area. And for the domestic books, you know, UEFA might count it as a bigger hit. They must have a team of people working on where they're at with this, because it's insane to me. Insane. You know, they're clearly still prioritising just going for it when it comes to squad building, and they're going, fuck the consequences. We'll figure it out when it comes. A £10 million slap on the wrist from UEFA is not going to deter a club that spent $1 billion in 2.5 years. It seems to me they're not going to stop. Their approach seems to be, I was going to say ask for forgiveness rather than permission, but I don't think they care about forgiveness. I just think they're trying to exploit the loophole, take whatever hit comes, force rule changes, pay the fines, and so be it. As a fan of a club that's getting rinsed because of a loophole that closed after the Glazers bought Manchester United, something, a leveraged buyout which is no longer allowed to happen, watching clubs benefit from loopholes being closed behind them, meanwhile we're fucked for it. And when you think about the fact that Todd Boehly took over because the British government didn't like Roman Abramovich's relationship with Vladimir Putin, forced him to sell the club. It's mad to me. All of this is absolutely wild to me. Absolutely wild. So to wrap it up, what should be done? What can be done? Is it going to encourage more clubs to bend and break the rules like this? You know, are you looking at stricter enforcement? Is there going to be actual sporting penalties and not just fines? You can't fine rich people. They just fucking pay it. They don't care. You know, are we going to look at closing loopholes proactively rather than wait until people have benefited and took the piss? UEFA have got a new rule, which is squad cost, which is going to limit spending on wages and transfers to 70% of revenue. Again, if you own fucking half of the skyscrapers in Dubai, you're probably going to be fine when it comes to that, especially when you're also selling your fucking burgers to yourself and your women's team to yourself and your pitch to yourself and your fucking shirts to yourself. You know, what's to stop you doing that? What's to stop them selling 1 billion shirts to themselves and booking 70 billion as revenue for the summer? Not me. Sounds like you can do that. Will other clubs try and copy what Chelsea are doing? You know, to an extent, some already have. You saw a lot of clubs going, wait, can we do that with the fucking contracts? There was 6 and 7 year contracts came out in a flurry after Chelsea did it. Since that loophole got closed, others can't really copy the ultra long contract thing. The internal sale idea, there's been some backlash, but sounds like Aston Villa are about to fucking go and do the same thing. The Chelsea saga, for me, is the perfect example of how financially unscrupulous modern football has become at the highest level. As a football fan, it fucks me off. You know, my club get absolutely rinsed. Paid over $1.5 billion in interest because our club was allowed to be bought in a leveraged buyout by owners who didn't give a fuck about us. And at the same time, you basically had the Roman Abramovich era where they were just feeding cash into them. You had the Abu Dhabi takeover of Manchester City doing the exact same thing. You've had Saudi Arabia getting in the mix when it comes to Newcastle. And all of these things, just countries getting involved in football clubs, it takes away the sporting merit of it for me. It really does. One thing's for sure. When it comes to exploiting loopholes, no one's going to get anywhere near what this Chelsea ownership have done. And I think they're going to get away with it. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you in the next one. Laters. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.